Can you believe that an angel could appear at just the right moment and disappear in seconds, leaving behind only silence and a miracle? It may seem like a scene from a movie or a figment of the imagination, but what if I told you that it really happened? Right before the eyes of a desperate mother in broad daylight, a sudden appearance, an intervention that defied logic, and a disappearance as quickly as it came. Was it a coincidence or a divine sign impossible to ignore? Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to discover now may surprise you deeply. In an increasingly skeptical world where answers need to be found in formulas and statistics, stories like these continue to remind us that there are things that cannot be explained by reason alone. There are spiritual forces all around us, working behind the scenes of our lives, and sometimes these forces manifest themselves in clear, direct, and utterly inexplicable ways. It is as if the heavens opened up for a brief moment to show us that angels exist, which divine signs are everywhere, and that the invisible, from time to time, reveals itself before us. Today, you will hear the story of an angelic intervention that stopped time for a few seconds. An innocent child, a busy street, a speeding car, and a mysterious presence that appeared out of nowhere, saved the girl and disappeared without a trace. No wings, lights, or harps. Just an ordinary human figure, but with an impossible reaction time, as if he already knew exactly what was about to happen. Have you ever been there? A moment when something or someone appeared out of nowhere to protect you, pull you away from danger, or simply comfort you when you needed it most. Maybe you felt that inexplicable presence, a subtle touch on your shoulder, an inner voice saying stop, wait, don't go down that path, and maybe only later you realized that something terrible could have happened if you had continued. Coincidence? Or maybe the guardian angels are more active than we imagine. There are thousands of stories like this around the world. Ordinary people in critical moments who were rescued by strangers that no one else had seen. Stories of divine interventions, of angels who save lives and disappear, leaving a sense of peace, gratitude, and mystery. And the more we hear these stories, the harder it becomes to dismiss them, because they carry something that goes beyond logic. They carry faith. And faith has a transformative power that defies any scientific explanation. In this video, we'll dive into this real and touching story that left a lasting mark on a family's life, and that could very well open your eyes to something bigger. Get ready to feel, reflect, and connect with something you may have experienced before, but never knew how to explain. And the most impressive thing is what happened right after. The mother, still in shock, looked around, trying to understand what she had just witnessed. The little girl was unharmed, even though she had narrowly escaped being run over, and the man, the one who had pulled her to the side of the sidewalk at the last second, was no longer there. She asked those nearby, but no one saw him. Some people didn't even notice his presence. It was as if he had appeared for a moment, fulfilled his mission, and returned to where he came from. In that mother's mind, a single question echoed. Who was that man? And in her heart, a silent certainty. She had witnessed a miracle, a divine sign, an angelic intervention. If this topic resonates with you, if you have ever felt something like this in your life, that sudden presence, that unexplained deliverance, leave a comment. Share your experience, your intuition, or even what this story awakened in you. I read everything with care, and often the stories you leave here touch even more people than we imagine. It is this exchange that transforms the channel into a living community, full of stories, faith, and purpose. And look, if this message is speaking to you, if the theme of spirituality, of divine signs, and of the interventions of angels, if something also fascinates or moves you, click the like button now. It's a simple gesture, but it shows YouTube that this type of content deserves to reach more people, perhaps even those who need a word like that today. And of course, if you want to continue watching videos like this, delve deeper into this spiritual journey and discover new real stories that connect us with the invisible, subscribe to the channel. Your presence here is what makes all this come to life. You are part of it. Now come back with me to this story, because what that mother discovered in the following days changes everything. And after that mysterious moment, something shifted inside her. Not just out of immense gratitude for having her daughter alive, but out of a deep sense that something bigger was at work behind the scenes of reality. It wasn't just luck. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was as if a veil had been torn away for an instant, revealing an invisible world that had always been there, but that most of us never perceive. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this story, as extraordinary as it may seem, is not an isolated case. There are thousands of similar stories spread throughout the world, stories that go beyond logic, that defy reason, and that at the same time touch the hearts of those with spiritual sensitivity. What do all these stories have in common? A moment of danger, an inexplicable rescue, a presence that appears and disappears, as if obeying a greater calling. But after all, who, or what, are these beings that appear in seconds and disappear without a trace? Since ancient times, many spiritual traditions have spoken of angels as messengers, as protectors sent by a divine force. For some cultures, they are beings of light, without a defined form, who only manifest themselves when there is a greater purpose. For others, they are more human figures with wings and serene expressions, who inhabit a dimension parallel to ours, ready to intervene when destiny allows. In the Christian tradition, angels are sent by God. They do not act out of vanity or by choice, but by mission. They are sent to protect, guide, reveal hidden truths, or prevent something before it happens. In other beliefs, such as spiritualism, it is believed that highly evolved spirits can also act like angels, fulfilling tasks of protection or support, even without being noticed. What if you've been saved by an angel without even realizing it? Maybe you remember a day when everything was against you, but something made you change your path. Or an impulsive decision that you were going to make, but a strange feeling held you back. Or maybe you felt, in a moment, of solitude, an invisible embrace, an unexplained warmth. How many times has something seemingly simple saved us from something bigger that we never even saw? These signs don't always come with trumpets or bright lights. Sometimes they come in silence, in intuition that comes out of nowhere, in a delay that seems inopportune, but later turns out to be providential, in a stranger who helps you and then disappears. It's not about seeing with your eyes, it's about feeling with your spirit. Science can try to explain everything with probabilities, with logic, with statistics, but anyone who has experienced something like this knows that there is another layer to life, an invisible, mysterious, and deeply real layer. Angels do not appear to prove anything, they appear to accomplish something, and that, in itself, completely changes our perception of the world. Imagine for a moment, what if the greatest salvations in your life happened without you even realizing it? What if the deliverance you thanked yourself for was actually an act of divine intervention? The simple fact that you are here now, watching this video, may be part of a much larger alignment than it seems. We are not just talking about belief. We are talking about real experiences, about profound impacts that transform lives, about decisions that were avoided, about deaths that were postponed, about lives that were spared for reasons that the mind cannot grasp, but that the soul immediately recognizes. And the most curious thing, the more you connect with this spiritual dimension, the more these signs begin to appear. It's not a coincidence, it's a connection. It's like tuning into a frequency that has always been around you, but that now begins to gain clarity. And when you start paying attention, everything changes. Your mindset changes. Your journey becomes more conscious, and little by little you realize that you were never alone. Comment here. That makes sense to me, because every story shared here strengthens that invisible connection between us all. Now let's move on. Because what comes next may help you realize if you've already received a sign and not recognized it. It was an ordinary afternoon. One of those days when no one expects anything extraordinary to happen. The sky, half cloudy, gave a soft light to the sidewalks full of people in a hurry. Cars passed by at a fast pace, horns honked in the background, and the smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery mixed with the perfume of flowers sold by a lady on the corner. Amidst this everyday scene, a mother walked with her small daughter, hand in hand, crossing one of the busiest avenues in the city. The little girl, with her quick and energetic steps, laughed at something she had seen in a colorful shop window. Her mother smiled too, attentive but involved in the routine of the walk, like so many others who had already done it there. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just another ordinary afternoon, until the incredible happened. It all happened in a matter of seconds. The child let go of her mother's hand for a brief moment, perhaps out of distraction, perhaps out of innocent impulse, perhaps because something caught her attention on the other side of the street. She ran, and at the same moment a bus turned the corner at high speed. A moment, a second, a breath caught in the air. The mother screamed. The people around her stopped, and time seemed to freeze. It was as if the entire world had gone into a standstill. The sound disappeared, and all that remained was the rapid beating of hearts and the panic in the mother's eyes. But then, something impossible happened. A figure appeared, not with light, not with wings, not with any cinematic grandeur. It was just a man, or at least it seemed like one. He appeared suddenly, as if he had already been there, as if he knew exactly the moment and the right point of the tragedy. With a quick and precise movement, he grabbed the girl, preventing her from reaching the street. A second later, the bus passed by without even realizing what could have happened. The man looked at the child, smiled slightly, and in the blink of an eye, he was gone. He didn't run, he didn't walk, he didn't say goodbye. He simply disappeared, into the crowd, or perhaps into something beyond it. The mother, in shock, tried to understand what had happened. People around her confirmed that he was there, but no one knew where he came from or where he had gone. And this is where reality begins to defy logic. Who was that man, a stranger with supernatural reflexes, an anonymous hero, or something more? There are times when answers come not through words but through feeling, and the mother, even without understanding, felt an inexplicable peace, not only for having her daughter back, but for the certainty that it was not just luck. It was something much bigger, something invisible, something that goes beyond the limits of what we know as real. This story is not fiction. It was told with detail, emotion, and a kind of truth that does not need to be proven, only felt. And it is not unique. There are countless similar accounts, situations in which everything pointed to the worst, but something or someone intervened, not by chance, not by coincidence, but by purpose. And this is where we enter the territory of the most subtle revelations of spirituality, angelic intervention. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we look beyond the surface of events, we begin to notice a hidden pattern, an invisible web of protection and care that manifests itself in the most critical moments of our journey. It could be an accident avoided, a word spoken at the right time, or even that delay that took you away from the exact place where something terrible was going to happen. The hidden truth behind these experiences is that they change our mindset. They make us rethink our priorities, decisions, and the way we see our own path. We can no longer live on autopilot when we realize that there is something, or someone, taking care of every detail, even when we can't see it. What's more, this opens up space for a new awareness, a new type of sensitivity that doesn't depend on vision but on perception, on inner listening, on faith that comes from feeling, not just believing. Many people spend their lives waiting for concrete proof of spirituality, but mystery is sometimes exactly what validates the sacred. Because if everything were explainable, there would be no room for transformation. The impact happens precisely when we are faced with the inexplicable and we choose to trust. That's when the journey begins to change, that the mind expands, that the heart awakens, and that the meaning of life stops being just survival and starts being discovery. These stories challenge us to look more closely behind the scenes of reality, to realize that perhaps the greatest miracles are not those with heavenly lights and sounds, but the quiet ones, the ones that happen in the silence of a busy street, the moment when everything could end and doesn't, in the arms that pull us back up when we're about to fall. What about you? Have you ever experienced something like this? Have you ever felt supported by an invisible force? Maybe you didn't even notice it at the time, but something inside you knows. And it's exactly this sensitivity that connects us. Because when we recognize that the invisible also acts, life stops being just a sequence of days and becomes a story that is worth feeling, telling, and sharing. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," because your experience may be the sign someone else is waiting for. She only let go of her mother's hand for a second, but it was enough. The scene seemed to flow in slow motion, as if time had decided to take a deep breath before moving on. The mother was still smiling, distracted by some thought, when she felt the absence of the warmth of the small hand. A sudden emptiness, a sudden silence within her. She turned her face away and everything changed. The girl, with her innocent lightness, had already taken her first steps towards the street. Maybe it was the dog barking on the other side, or the colorful balloons floating attached to a popcorn cart. That was how the world appeared to her eyes, charming, bright, safe. She had no idea what was to come. The asphalt reflected the grey light of the sky, still wet from the morning rain. And that was when the sharp sound of an engine revving filled the air. A large black car appeared on the horizon of the narrow street. It was coming fast, too fast. The driver, perhaps distracted, perhaps just impatient, showed no signs of slowing down. The mother's heart raced. She tried to run, but her feet seemed to sink into the ground. She screamed her daughter's name, but her voice was broken by fear. Some people around her began to react, but it was too late for any normal movement. Time did not wait. The car was approaching, and the girl was just a few steps away from the road. The child's eyes were still glued to the red balloons, unaware of the danger. She didn't know that the street could be a thin line between life and the end, and the tension at that moment became almost unbearable. It was as if the entire universe was watching, silently waiting for the outcome. Every detail took on a different weight. The sound of the wheels against the asphalt, the breath held in the chests around, the cold wind that suddenly blew, messing up the girl's hair. The mother's hand stretched out in the air, trying to reach the impossible, and the car, with its headlights on, tearing apart the space between now and never again. Everything pointed to an imminent tragedy. The kind of scene that changes lives forever, that tears dreams from our hearts, that becomes headline news, that changes trajectories, that silently destroys. But what happened next cannot be explained in words alone. It was as if an invisible presence had intervened in the scene. That moment, so full of fear, was interrupted by something that cannot be easily described, only felt. A sudden, almost imperceptible movement. A force that acted on the exact limit between the possible and the miraculous. And then, the impact did not happen. The girl was pulled back at the last second, gently but firmly, as if invisible hands had wrapped around her, pulling her away from the path of death. The car passed by, loud and indifferent, without even noticing the terror it left behind. The girl sat down on the sidewalk, not understanding what was happening, and tears began to fall from her mother's eyes, not of sadness but of relief, of a gratitude that could not be contained in her chest. People around came closer. Some asked if they were okay. Others just watched in silence, trying to understand how something so serious had been avoided by so little. And that was when the elderly lady murmured something that many heard, but few understood immediately. "She has a strong angel." This sentence echoed as if it had opened a crack in a veil, as if, for a moment, it allowed everyone there to see a layer beyond the visible reality, because, in fact, there was no logical explanation for what had happened, and most of them, even without admitting it, felt the same chill in their hearts. That was not normal. What if we are surrounded by these silent presences all the time? What if there are forces that act behind the scenes in our lives, warding off dangers, guiding us, saving us without us even knowing it? We tend to live thinking that everything is under our control, that every step depends exclusively on our will. But there are moments, like this one, that show us that the story is much deeper, and when we allow ourselves to recognize this, something inside us changes. The way we look at the world changes. Our decisions, our judgments, even our fears. We begin to understand that not everything needs to be understood with the mind, that there are truths that can only be accepted with the heart, This mother and daughter will never be the same. The memory of that day was not one of pain, but of revelation. And these kinds of experiences become an invisible anchor for difficult days, a living reminder that even in the darkest moments we are not alone. Something or someone is always there, ready to act. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a huge difference between believing by hearsay and experiencing it firsthand. When you experience a moment like this, your mindset realigns. You start to see the world with more attentive eyes. You start to listen to signs that previously went unnoticed, and you start to understand that miracles don't always come with flashes of light or celestial sounds. Sometimes they are silent, sudden and subtle, and yet they change everything. Comment here. That makes sense to me. Because more and more people are realizing that the invisible is real, because what happened in that next instant defied all logic. When the car was so close that even the reflection in the girl's eyes seemed frozen with fear, it was then, exactly then, that he appeared. A man, tall, simple-looking, wearing inconspicuous clothes with a serene look, almost too calm for that panicked scene. No one knew where he had come from. There were no hurried footsteps approaching, no running, no warning. He was simply there, as if he had come out of thin air. With firm but incredibly gentle movements, he reached for the girl and pulled her back, as if she were weightless. His arms were strong, but his gesture was tender. He lifted her easily and placed her on the sidewalk, safe and out of any danger. The mother, still paralyzed by shock, tried to run to her daughter, but her eyes were fixed on that man. She wanted to thank him, scream, cry, hug him, but he was no longer there. There was no trace, no direction he could have gone, no logical explanation. She looked around, left, right, and nothing. She asked around, but no one had seen him arrive and no one had seen him leave. They only confirmed what her eyes had already registered. Someone had appeared out of nowhere and saved her daughter, and then disappeared as if he had accomplished a mission. The feeling that remained was not one of doubt, but of revelation. As if that moment had opened a window to something greater. Because when reality bends before something we cannot explain, our mind hesitates. But the heart recognizes, and he recognized it. The mother knelt beside her daughter, hugging her tightly, and tears flowed uncontrollably. They weren't just tears of relief, they were tears of something deeper. It was as if she had been touched by an invisible presence, something that reminded her that there was a whole world going on beyond what the eyes could see. And that changed everything. The daughter, too young to understand, just said, "Mommy?" The boy smiled at me. A smile. Simple. Calm. Like someone who calms the soul at a time when everything could fall apart. And in that small detail lay a hidden truth. That man was not just a hero of flesh and blood. He was a sign, a reminder, an answer. From that moment on, this mother's life was no longer ordinary. She did not tell this story with exaggerations. She did not need to invent anything, because anyone who experiences something like this knows it, feels it, carries the memory not as a story but as a mark, and this mark made her see the world with a new mentality, with different eyes. Every decision after that was made with more awareness, every gesture with more intention. It's easy to live on autopilot, thinking that everything is random, that we are adrift, alone in the midst of a rushing chaos. But all it takes is a second, an instant, a breath of the invisible for everything to change. And the most impressive thing, this can happen to anyone. It doesn't require religion, ritual, or merit. It just happens, at the right time, at the exact moment when everything is hanging by a thread. And if you stop to think about it, maybe you've already experienced something similar. That time you avoided an accident by inches, or when you decided to change your path without knowing why, and later discovered that it saved you, or when you received an unexpected call, a message, a hug, right when you needed it most. Coincidence? Maybe. But what if it's not? The truth is that often the backstage of life is in motion without us realizing it. And when something or someone appears out of nowhere to intervene, it is not just luck. It is intervention. It is purpose. It is part of a journey that goes far beyond what we understand, because there is a type of silent care that inhabits the spaces between our steps. And when this manifests itself, everything takes on a new meaning. The transformation that comes after this is not loud, it is subtle, but powerful. The way we look at people changes. The way we face suffering, haste, fears, everything goes through a lighter filter. It is as if something inside us says, "You are not alone, you never were." And when this happens, the feeling of security no longer depends on the external world. It comes from within. It comes from the confidence that no matter how difficult everything seems, there is something or someone that still holds the fort for us. That intervenes when we need it most. That appears when everything is about to fall apart. And the most curious thing is that after experiencing something like this, other people start to appear around us with similar stories. It's as if an invisible network of testimonies begins to form, connecting those who have seen beyond, who have been touched by something inexplicable but real. Each story carries a detail that seems small but has a profound impact. A look, a gesture, a presence, because deep down the message is the same. We are not here by chance, and we are not alone. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," because more people are experiencing these revelations than you might think. And as these experiences accumulate, whether through your own experiences or through the stories that cross your path, a new understanding begins to emerge. It is as if a bridge were formed between the visible and the invisible, between what the eyes see and what the soul recognizes. And the more you allow yourself to walk along this bridge, the clearer it becomes that there are signs, guidance, and even presences that are there to guide, protect, and awaken. If it makes sense to you, take a look at the material I left below. It's called Reading Your Birth Angel. This is complementary content to what we talked about here and can save you a lot of time in practice, especially if you feel like you are going through internal changes, important decisions, or even moments when everything seems a little off track. This reading can help you reconnect with the personalized guidance of the angelic kingdom, bringing more clarity, intuition, and direction to your journey. It's here in the description, but I might take it down in the next few days. So if it's useful to you, take advantage of it while it's still available. And now, following this same line of discoveries that go beyond what is visible, there is something even more intriguing that happened shortly after that episode. The mother was on her knees on the sidewalk, still panting, her heart pounding in her chest as if it wanted to escape. Her eyes scanned the street from one side to the other, looking for any sign of that man. Nothing. No one. Just cars passing in the distance, pedestrians distracted with their own destinies, and the echo of the sudden break that still echoed in her mind. Her son, curled up in her arms, was sobbing softly, scared, but alive, intact. It was as if time had stopped for a few seconds, and now, little by little, everything was moving again, and except her. Because inside her something had changed. She remembered it clearly. The little hand pulling away from hers, the scream that came out before she could even think, the car coming too fast. And then, that man. He appeared like a shadow, as if he had stepped out of a time warp, grabbed the child in a firm, precise movement, and placed her back on the sidewalk away from danger. Then he disappeared, without running, without tripping, without saying a word. What remained was silence, emptiness in the place where he should have been, and an almost inexplicable feeling that this was not common, it was not possible, but it was real. The mother got up with difficulty. Still hugging her son, she took a few steps towards the place where everything had happened. No trace, no familiar face, no one looking at her as if they wanted to confirm what they had just witnessed. It was as if she was the only one who had seen it, as if that moment had been hers alone, as if the entire city had pressed pause for a few seconds just so that that encounter could happen. She wondered, who was that man? How did he appear so quickly? And why did he disappear so silently? Nothing made sense within common logic, but what she felt went beyond logic. It was a presence, a strength, a care that overflowed with love and precision, a direct intervention, as if someone somewhere had said, "It's not his time yet." And that's when it all started to sink in. It wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't some random stranger with quick reflexes. There was something more, something that came from beyond what human eyes could see, something that called for a new mindset, a new perspective on life and its invisible layers. She wasn't religious, but at that moment, she couldn't deny that she had felt a connection, as if a forgotten part of her had been touched, as if the invisible had left a very clear message. You are not alone, and that kind of awareness changes everything. The way you see details, the way you pay attention to signs, the way you start to question what is chance and what is purpose, it's almost like a new level of awareness is suddenly activated, and you start to see beauty, synchronicity, little miracles disguised as routine. She stood there for a few minutes, staring into space, trying to comprehend what had just happened, and even without answers, a peace began to grow inside her. A strange but profound peace, as if someone had taken care of everything behind the scenes, as if this was just the beginning of a new phase of her journey, a phase in which she would have to relearn how to trust, feel, and listen more deeply. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when experiences like this happen, they don't just come to surprise. They come to provoke a real transformation. They open a gap, a crack in what we call normality, and show that there is a hidden truth in everything we experience, an intelligence operating behind the scenes, guiding, protecting, intervening when necessary, but always respecting our time and our path. And this is where one of the biggest revelations lies, that few people realize. It's not about seeing to believe, it's about feel to recognize. The mother saw no wings, heard no heavenly choirs, had no supernatural visions, but she felt. I felt it so strongly that it was impossible to ignore it. And when the soul feels it, the whole body responds. We cry without understanding. We tremble. For no apparent reason, we feel our skin crawl as if the universe had touched us with an invisible finger. This presence that saves, guides, protects, it doesn't need to be shown theatrically. Sometimes it reveals itself in silence, in simplicity, at the exact moment when everything could go wrong, but doesn't. And when you start to recognize this, something inside you also starts to change. You start to make different decisions. You start to choose more consciously. You look at life with more reverence, because you understand that there is something greater, something that goes beyond your own strength, working in your favor. That's where trust comes in. Not blind trust, but the kind that comes from direct experience. That comes when you experience something so remarkable, so out of the ordinary, that the only possible response is, this was no accident, and this perception opens doors. Internal. Doors? Doors of understanding, connection, and even healing. From that day on, that woman never crossed a street the same way again. She never held her son's hand absent-mindedly again, but she also never looked at life with the same coldness as before, because now she knew. You knew that there is a backstage, a plan that cannot be seen, but that acts, that watches, that manifests itself when it is most needed, even when we are not expecting it. And when you realize this, it's as if everything around you takes on a different tone. Coincidences stop being coincidences. The right words at the right time stop seeming like luck. People who appear out of nowhere, with phrases that touch you deeply, start to be seen as instruments of something much bigger. It's as if life were whispering, pay attention. It's all connected. Comment here, I'm on this journey too, if that makes sense to you. Because there was still something important that happened after that. Something that revealed in an even more profound way the impact of that experience on her life. She told the story for the first time that night, when her mother called to see how they had spent the day. Her voice was shaking, not because she was still afraid, but because as she repeated each detail of what she had experienced, something inside her seemed to align differently, as if she was confirming to herself that it had really happened. And it wasn't just the result of shock. She described every second with precision. The moment of distraction, the sound of the tires, the figure that appeared out of nowhere, the man who held her son, the speed, the firmness. And then, the disappearance. When she finished, there was silence on the other end of the line, and then her mother replied, "Daughter, that was an angel, have no doubt about it." She heard that, and for the first time, she let the tears flow uncontrollably. Because deep down, that was exactly what she already knew, but needed to hear someone say it out loud. It was a relief, as if the hidden truth that had been throbbing in her heart was finally being allowed to come out. It was like a confirmation that came not just from her mother's voice, but from something bigger, a validation of her own intuition. In the days that followed, she shared what had happened with a few more people close to her, and the most curious thing is that, instead of skepticism, she found someone listening, attention, and even a certain reverence. Neighbors would say, "My God, this is unbelievable," or "Do you know that I've heard similar cases?" More rational friends would be quiet for a few seconds and then say, "Look, there are things that we just can't explain." And those who were more sensitive, they had no doubts. They would say firmly, this was divine protection, this was God acting. But the most important thing wasn't how others reacted. It was what was happening inside her, each time she relived that moment. It was as if a new layer of understanding was being revealed. Because as the days went by, it wasn't just about saving her son anymore. It was about why. What did it want to teach? What did it want to transform? From that moment on, she began to see life in a different light. The days were no longer so automatic. Routines began to be filled with more presence. Even breakfast took on a new meaning. She felt an almost suffocating gratitude for being able to prepare her son's snack, see him running around the house, hear his laughter echoing down the hallway. Things that had previously seemed ordinary now carried a different weight, a silent sweetness. It was as if each detail said, "You still have time. Take advantage of it." And this realization generated something even greater, a sincere desire to reconnect, not with doctrines, rules, or religious discourses, but with what she now called essence, that invisible force that intervened at the most delicate moment of her journey, what many call faith, but which for her translated into trust. Trust that life, despite everything, had a purpose, and that we are not walking around completely alone even when it seems so. This change was not sudden or dramatic. It was subtle, deep, an internal adjustment that shaped her decisions. She began to pay more attention to the people around her, to offer help without expecting anything in return, to talk to God more in her own way, without formulas, without schedules, only with truth. And this transformed her. Little by little, her relationships improved. The way she treated her parents changed. Haste gave way to intention, and that woman who used to try to control everything now accepted the unexpected events along the way with more serenity. Because she knew, there are things that are beyond our control, but they are not beyond our care, and the most beautiful thing was to see how this experience spread, because even without realizing it, it began to inspire other people. The way he told what happened was not sensationalist. It was real, it was alive, it was felt, and it touched those who listened, not with fear, but with hope. Some even said, "After you told me that, I started paying more attention to the signs in my own life." Others confessed similar experiences, but that they had never had the courage to interpret as something spiritual. She listened to everything, with an open heart. She didn't try to convince anyone. She just shared. This is the kind of impact that cannot be measured in words. It is a reflection that reverberates in silence, like a perfume that lingers in the air long after the person has passed. Her story became a seed, planted with emotion, watered with faith, and left to the mercy of time, trusting that at the right moment it would germinate in someone's heart. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when someone experiences something like this, the transformation doesn't just happen in the spirit. It also affects the body, the mind, and the attitudes. And this directly affects decisions. That woman who was previously anxious and controlling now sought to listen more, breathe more, and act with more clarity. Even her simplest choices began to carry purpose, things like saying no without guilt, like setting aside moments of silence, like allowing herself to cry when she needed to. This new mindset distanced her from certain environments, and brought her closer to others. People who were previously part of her routine naturally distanced themselves, while others, more aligned with her new frequency, began to appear. This is how it is when we change on the inside. The world around us also adjusts, like a reflection that mirrors what you vibrate. And this new world brought peace. Not the absence of problems, but a type of peace that comes from the certainty that you are exactly where you should be. And even though she had never seen that man again, even though she didn't know his name, his face, or his origins, she didn't need answers. You knew, with a conviction so deep that no doubt could erase it. I know it was an angel. This certainty became her starting point. Whenever something difficult happened, whenever fear tried to return, she remembered, if on that day, in that second, there was someone or something who intervened out of love, protection, purpose, then why doubt now? This memory became an anchor, strength, a living reminder that there is more behind the scenes of life than we can imagine. And it's curious how certain events, even if they last just a few seconds, can redefine everything. Change the way you see yourself, redirect your entire story. Because the truth is that what transforms you isn't always what lasts the longest. Sometimes it's what lasts the longest, enough to wake you up inside. Write it down. That makes sense to me. If you have also experienced something that turned you inside out, but made you reborn with more faith, because there is a last part of this story that reveals something even stronger. The impact of that experience was not limited to her, far from it. In fact, as she shared her story with more people, a surprising phenomenon began to emerge. Similar stories began to emerge all around her, coming from places and people she would never have imagined. Ordinary people who, like her, had experienced moments when something beyond human comprehension seemed to intervene in a direct and unexpected way. It was as if an invisible thread connected these stories, a subtle pattern that some would call a miracle, others divine intervention, and still others simply inexplicable protection. One afternoon, during a conversation between neighbors, an elderly lady approached and told me that years ago, a stranger appeared out of nowhere to stop her grandson from falling down a ladder. It was so fast, so silent. I didn't have time to understand. I just felt the strong hug that saved me from the worst, she said with tears in her eyes, revealing the same conviction of someone who knows that it was no coincidence. On another occasion, a childhood friend reported that during a violent storm, he was pulled away from a tree that fell minutes later by a force that he could not even explain, but that saved his life. These stories did not come from people seeking fame or recognition, but from those who carried a hidden truth that could not be ignored. They were stories of transformed lives, renewed mindsets, and above all, a profound impact on the way each person saw the world and their journey. Many began to realize that these experiences are not as rare as society generally imagines. On the contrary, they are more common than one might think, and perhaps that is precisely why they are so discreet. They do not need to be announced, because their power speaks for itself, behind the scenes of everyday life. This realization generated a sense of belonging. She was not alone. She was not an exception. She was part of something bigger, an invisible web that connects each of us, through signs, encounters, and revelations that escape logic, but make perfect sense when seen through the lens of faith and transformation. It is this silent web of events that challenges the limited view of the world and expands consciousness to a territory where spirituality and everyday life intermingle, where decisions and attitudes take on new weight and meaning. When we understand that we are not completely alone, that there is a greater force at work even when everything seems out of control, we begin to change the way we view our own difficulties. We begin to see crises as stages on the journey, opportunities to grow and learn, and not just as obstacles. This changes our mindset and, consequently, our choices. The decision to persist, to open ourselves to the unknown, to seek answers even when they are not clearly visible. All of this becomes an essential part of the transformation process. These stories, gathered in conversations, encounters, and shared memories, create a silent but powerful impact. They act as living testimonies, which validate the experience of spiritual intervention, making it palpable and accessible, not as a distant tale, but as something real, present, that happens within the walls of houses, in the streets we walk, through and within the hearts of those who still have the courage to believe in the invisible. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because in addition to validating these stories, we need to understand what these experiences really mean to those who live them. It's not just about the miracle itself, but about the change it brings about. It's about breaking the mental and emotional routine that keeps us trapped in a pattern of disbelief and fear, and opening up to a greater truth, which is often hidden precisely in what most people try to ignore or rationalize too much. It is in this space between the visible and the invisible that true transformation resides. There, decisions gain new light. We begin to realize that our journey is not just made up of steps taken by ourselves, but that there is a greater intelligence taking care of the details, the surprises, and even the pain. This does not nullify personal responsibility. Quite the opposite. It drives us to act more consciously, knowing that each choice reverberates in multiple dimensions of our existence. With this new mindset, crises cease to be enemies and become allies. They challenge us to leave our comfort zone, to question our paradigms, to seek a deeper meaning for everything we experience. And it is precisely at this point that faith becomes something practical, tangible, that influences our daily lives and helps us navigate what seems unpredictable. Furthermore, these interventions convey a clear message about the impact of our emotions and attitudes. They remind us that, even in the face of chaos, there is room for calm, trust, and love, forces that act as anchors in the midst of storms. This often silent truth is capable of sustaining those who recognize it, providing a solid foundation for moving forward. And the most impressive thing about all this is that this network of stories is not limited to a specific group, belief, or culture. It transcends borders, religions, and eras. Since time immemorial, there have been records, some whispered, others written with fervor, of encounters with beings that protect, guide, or warn us. This reveals that, deep down, there is a universality in this human experience, a bridge that connects all the people who at some point touch the invisible and return to tell the story. It is this bridge that connects that mother's story to so many others around the world. It is this connection that gives us the strength to keep believing, to keep exploring the mysteries that lie behind the scenes of life, and to recognize that, even when everything seems uncertain, we are not adrift. We are on a journey with purpose, where each intervention, each sign, each moment of protection plays an essential role. So this story is not just hers. It is about everyone who has felt a touch that cannot be explained, who has experienced the hidden truth that moves the universe. And this invites us to expand our vision, to make room for the unexpected, and to cultivate a mindset that welcomes transformation as a natural part of the journey. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too," if you believe that there is much more behind the stories that life presents to us, and that understanding this can change everything. There is something deeply comforting in knowing that, even in moments when everything seems uncertain, lost, or far from any logic, we are not alone. This feeling is not just a temporary relief, but a transformation of our mentality that opens doors to a world where the invisible acts with a real impact on our lives. You may not see it, you may not feel it clearly, but the forces that surround us work silently behind the scenes of existence, taking care of details that we do not even imagine. It is like an invisible, constant protection, which does not depend on our belief to be true, but which becomes palpable to those who are willing to open their hearts to perceive it. Just imagine, while we are trapped in doubt, fear, or a sense of isolation, there is a network of spiritual care that moves, acting with a precision and wisdom that surpasses our understanding. Angels, as many call them, are these agents of peace and protection, who intervene in subtle but powerful ways. They do not need to show themselves in lights or loud voices. Their strength lies in the delicacy of their gesture, in the interference that changes a trajectory, in the instant that saves a life. The impact of these moments is immense, and the consequences reverberate in our future decisions, in the changes we make, and in the journey we choose to follow. This hidden truth can be an invitation to rethink the way we see our challenges and difficulties. Faith is often not a leap in the dark, but a conscious decision to trust in what cannot yet be proven by reason. It is accepting that true transformation happens precisely when we allow the unknown to act in our lives, even if silently. This attitude changes the way we face everyday life, making us more resilient and more open to opportunities for growth that arise when we least expect them. And it's not just about waiting for something external to save us, but about understanding that this protection is also linked to an internal responsibility, the way we react, how we take care of our energy, how we keep our mind and heart aligned with this greater force. Self-care then becomes a channel for this spiritual intervention to flow more intensely, creating a virtuous cycle of renewal and strengthening. Each person's journey, however lonely it may seem, is always connected to something greater, which protects and guides us, even when the path seems dark. This feeling of invisible support is not just an abstract belief, it is an experience shared by thousands of people around the world. Stories of interventions, of inexplicable sensations, of moments when intuition was stronger than logic, all of this makes up a mosaic that reveals the depth of this connection between the human and the divine. It is a truth that crosses cultures, religions and generations, showing that regardless of the name we give to these forces, they are present, active, watching over us at every step. Even if our routine distracts us, even if the rush of everyday life makes us forget, these angels, real or metaphorical, keep working. They are in the shadow of the important decisions we make, in the small choices we make to keep going. Their action is discreet but incessant, living proof that protection does not depend on visibility but on constancy. They work to ensure that, even in the darkest nights, there is a ray of light capable of guiding us back on the path. When we begin to recognize this reality, our outlook on life changes radically. Suddenly, the world ceases to be a hostile and uncertain place and becomes a setting where hope and faith walk side by side with reason and courage. Difficulties begin to be seen as tests that strengthen, and moments of silence become opportunities to listen to what lies beyond the obvious. This new mindset is the key to a journey marked by profound and lasting transformation. Furthermore, this awareness teaches us about the value of time and the decisions we make. Spiritual protection does not exempt us from facing storms, but it gives us tools to go through them with more serenity and focus. Understanding this changes the impact that fear and doubt have on us, replacing them with an inner strength that grows with each challenge overcome. This strength is what keeps us standing, even when circumstances seem to knock us down. It is important to remember that this protective presence is not only for moments of danger or crisis, but for the entire journey of life. From the simplest steps to the biggest decisions, it is there influencing in a subtle and effective way. This notion brings immense comfort, because it reminds us that we do not have to carry the weight of the world alone. There is an invisible support network, ready to act when we need it most, ready to push us forward, even when the journey is difficult. And this understanding brings an even greater revelation that faith is not an escape, but a lever to transform our reality. It invites us to see beyond the immediate, to perceive the backstage of existence where everything connects in a perfect dance between the visible and the invisible. This connection allows us to live more fully, with greater awareness of the impact that our attitudes have on ourselves and the world around us. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding this protection in its entirety is opening yourself up to a dimension of existence where each moment carries the potential for powerful revelations and decisions that can change the course of our history. Spirituality, in this context, is not just a passive belief, but an invitation to conscious action, a transformation that manifests itself in the small and large choices of everyday life. This journey of discovery and empowerment leads us to question old certainties and embrace mystery with courage. It is at this point that our mindset truly begins to transform, as we begin to see the world not only as a space of challenges, but as a fertile field for growth and positive impact for ourselves and for everyone who crosses our path. Comment below This makes sense to me if you have ever felt, even if only subtly, this silent presence that protects and guides us. It is amazing how we often go through life thinking we are alone, facing our fears and challenges as if they were insurmountable barriers, without realizing that there is an invisible network that supports us, that works behind the scenes of our existence. This spiritual protection is not a distant idea or a tale to soothe the heart, but a reality that manifests itself in subtle and powerful ways whose impacts reverberate far beyond what we can imagine. The feeling of being supported by something greater transforms our mentality, generating a kind of internal strength that goes far beyond what logic can explain. When we begin to recognize these moments, these silent interventions, we realize that they shape our decisions, influence our journey, and make us understand that the invisible plays a fundamental role in our personal story. It is not just a matter of blind faith, but of making room for a hidden truth that connects us with the divine, with the energy that sustains everything around us. This revelation brings deep comfort, because it reminds us that even on days when darkness seems to prevail, there is an invisible light that never goes out and that acts to protect us. It is curious to think that this angelic presence, or this protective force, is so close, yet so unnoticed by most people. Many have experienced situations in which instinct saved them, in which a strong intuition prevented a disaster, or simply felt an inexplicable peace in the face of chaos. These moments are living proof that spiritual intervention is not just a myth or an isolated belief, but a real phenomenon that acts silently, directly impacting our lives and choices. This inner transformation, which comes with the awareness that we are not alone, changes our perception of the world and makes us more resilient. We know that we can face adversity with new strength because we have support that goes beyond the material, that does not depend on the approval of others or external circumstances. This invisible force is an invitation for us to have a more open mindset, to allow ourselves to trust and move forward even when everything indicates otherwise. And this trust creates a domino effect. It changes the way we approach decisions, small everyday actions, and even the way we relate to others. We begin to realize that each choice has a greater impact than we imagine, that each step is part of a great journey, that, despite the challenges, is being guided and protected by something much greater. It is at this point that faith becomes action. That belief materializes into real and tangible transformation. It's not just about waiting for spectacular miracles or obvious signs, but about recognizing and appreciating the discrete interventions, the coincidences that save lives, the moments of clarity that emerge in the midst of confusion. These are the details that make up the true story of spiritual protection, a story that is written daily, in every choice, in every moment in which we choose to believe that something beyond the visible is taking care of us. This awareness also brings with it a great responsibility to keep our hearts and minds aligned with this protective energy, cultivating thoughts and attitudes that foster this connection. It is a cycle of exchange and care, where the more we make room for this presence, the stronger it becomes in our lives, impacting not only our own path, but also that of those around us. This invisible network is strengthened by our intention, by our active faith, transforming even the most difficult moments into opportunities for learning and growth. When we look back and identify these moments of intervention, we realize that spiritual protection is a thread that connects past, present, and future. It has always been there, working to ensure that our story is not just a sequence of random events, but a script full of meaning, guided by a force that acts behind the scenes with wisdom and love. This understanding changes our vision of what is possible, of what we are capable of overcoming and achieving. It is as if throughout this journey we receive small signs, small touches that remind us that we are protected, even when everything seems to conspire against us. These signs, these small revelations, are what keep us firm, what renews our hope and strengthens our faith. They are the constant reminder that protection is present, even when invisible, even when silent. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding this dimension of spiritual protection leads us to question the very nature of our existence and the forces that truly move the world. This hidden truth is not something that is revealed immediately, but rather that is gradually discovered as we open ourselves to experiences and to the wisdom that transcends the material. It is an invitation to an internal transformation that touches all aspects of our lives: mindset, decisions, relationships, and purpose. This journey of discovery reveals to us that the impact of this protection goes far beyond the individual, reaching a collective dimension, an energy that connects each of us with something greater. It is as if we were all interconnected by an invisible web of care and love, where each act of faith and courage strengthens not only ourselves, but the entire network that sustains life. It is an experience that transforms the way we see the world and puts us in tune with a greater truth, which often remains in the shadows, but which is the basis of all existence. Recognizing this presence in our lives is making room for the extraordinary to manifest itself in our daily lives. It is allowing faith to become an active force that guides our decisions and influences the path we choose to follow. This profound transformation does not happen overnight, but is the result of a series of revelations that we accumulate along the way, in which we learn to trust, feel, and perceive what was previously hidden. The understanding that we are protected, even without seeing it, gives us new courage to face whatever comes, because we know that there is a silent force acting in our favor. This courage is not the absence of fear, but the certainty that we are not alone in the face of it. It is the certainty that, behind the difficulties, there is constant support ready to lift us up and guide us. This transformation of the mind and spirit is one of the greatest gifts we can receive, as it changes the way we view life and the challenges that arise along the way. It teaches us to trust in the invisible, to believe in the impact of small things, in the strength of details that often go unnoticed, but which carry the power to transform everything. Comment: I'm on this journey too. If you've ever felt, even for a moment, this invisible presence guiding and protecting you, if you've made it this far, you've already been part of something that goes beyond words, a conversation about the invisible that protects and transforms us, even when we don't realize it. This type of content is made precisely for those who seek more meaning, more connection, and that feeling that in the midst of everything we are not alone. If this message resonated with you, the best way to continue receiving this type of reflection and learning is by staying here, following the next stories that will come. Leave a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end, so I know you were there on this journey with me," feeling this energy that connects and transforms. Oh, and if this video brought a little of that light that we need so much, don't worry, leave a like. Not only for the content, but for the connection we created during this conversation. There is a video here on the side that complements this subject in a way that will broaden this vision even further. Click there and continue with me there, because this journey is just beginning.